But yeah, this is Grim here with a quick video covering the spreadsheets for Tomb of Cerberus for the Warlock. Okay, so what can we expect to see? Well, a couple things considering how this patch has affected stats mostly. You might notice that this is just a sim with all the gear that you would be getting from Heroic and Mythic, right? So these sims don't include legendaries because those have a weird effect with your stat weights, specifically the Hood of Eternal Disdain. But what we can expect to see, and this is just a rough shot in the dark, if you will, the Diabolic Helm is a very strong itemized piece, but at the same time, the 100 Fathom Veil is also very strong, mainly due to the fact that it has like almost 1240 mastery. The Blackened Mask of Disgrace is great for destruction and demonology because of the high amounts of haste. What we can expect to see is for Affliction, haste equal mastery. And I don't want to say haste over mastery because a lot of people have the tendency to just completely go crazy and disregard mastery and have like shitloads of haste and like 0 mastery. So keep this in mind. For Affliction, you want to try to keep haste and mastery balanced with haste still having a little more haste. What this means is we're going to be favoring haste more than mastery, especially in multiple targets, because the value of the soul shard generation outweighs the mastery now. And for most of the expansion, it's been get all the mastery and haste and crit balance. This time, it's mastery over crit, but you still want to have them fairly balanced. Like you still want to have more crit than versatility, obviously. For your enchants, you do want your intellect, but mostly your rings. You're going to get the 400 haste from your rings, and your intellect's going for the 200 for your cape. Yeah. The reason haste is so good right now is the fact that the soul shard generation in this tier is more crucial than the flat damage from mastery. You still want a lot of it. Like, I believe the bare minimum you want for Affliction is like 8,800 for pre-raid at 930 item level. And once you have everything best in slot with your 4-piece bonus, which in most cases includes the Helm, Diabolic Mantle, Diabolic Robe, and yada yada, and so on and so forth. What I can say is the build that I personally run with Affliction includes the Hood of Eternal Disdain because I always use Writhe and Agony, and the fact that Soul Harvest, once you really optimize it, it's actually better in a lot of cases than Phantom Singularity. So for me, the Helm is going to be a guaranteed slot. The chest, if you manage to get a hold of the Master Harvester, it's automatically better than the Diabolic Robe. But Diabolic Robe is still very good. So for me, in most cases, it's going to be the Hood and either the chest or the cloak. It really depends. If you get a hold of the cloak, that's great. It's your second legendary. If you get a hold of the bracers, the Stretton's is still good. It's notably better than Pride As and the I think one other legendary. It's definitely better than Sacrolash. Sacrolash is just a joke. But yeah, my legendaries for Affliction are the Hood of Eternal Disdain and the Stretton Sleepless Shackles, so I'm good in that department because the bracers give a modest amount of haste. So what this means is you still want to keep your mastery, but go for things that have mostly haste on them. Really haste, as long as your gear has haste mastery or haste mastery or mastery crit on it, you're fine. Like there's really no worrying about it. Like even destruction still wants a lot of haste. Like you'd think with their 4-piece favoring mastery, you'd want a lot of mastery in destruction. That's actually not the case. You still want haste because it's just better for destruction as well because it affects your soul shard generation. And it's a really good thing to have for destruction because soul shards, or at least soul shard fragment generation, is basically what makes Incinerate such a very strong spell to cast. And it's just one reason why it's one reason why Fire and Brimstone is actually stronger than Cataclysm in AoE, because you're just effectively cheesing the soul shards. Destruction stat weight's basically the same. Mastery is notably better than crit, because Mastery, anytime you add a second target ever, Mastery beats out crit by like a mile and a half. Haste is still better because it just affects your casts, and actually, man, you can get more spells off during your Havoc window, and that's really important because now Havoc is back to having a cooldown. Well, at least with Recap, this takes 25 seconds off the cooldown or something. Demonology, not much has changed. Like, it's still Haste Mastery, so really, right now, as long as you have Haste and Mastery on your gear, you can go through a Demonology stat weight and just be able to play every single spec, which is arguably the most balanced that we've ever been. Demonology is still the weird spec that sims absolutely the highest, but in practice it really falls short because it's very hard to optimize Demonology because movement absolutely destroys it. We literally have hardly anything that casts on move aside from Doom, Grimoire, the damn Demonic Circle or Mortal Coil, and Demon Wrath. Like, Demon Wrath on its own isn't even that good. It's just something you can cast on the move. Really, like, the whole point of Demonology is being able to keep up 14 plus demons, and if you can't do that, then you're better off playing Destruction or Affliction. Really, in most cases for progression, you're better off playing Affliction. Once anything goes on farm, of course, you play Destruction. The 5% nerf is another thing I would like to address for Affliction. A lot of people are like complaining that we're broken. No, that was a deserved nerf. It was mainly to make sure that Affliction didn't completely dominate again, because Destruction was like not even on logs because not enough people were playing Destruction. So, and then when they did play it, it hardly ever showed up on my meters. Demonology sim in theory is great, but in practice it's not. It's just really weird to optimize it, because if you mess up one little thing in your opener, then you're pretty much have just screwed all your damage. And that's kind of the shitty part with Demonology. As far as the specs go, I would still heavily suggest playing Affliction, and really just with the haste you're getting for Affliction, you can translate that into playing Destruction and Demonology just fine. Like, at best in slot, Affliction's still going to have almost 28% haste and 99% mastery. It really doesn't matter at that point. Just gear with Affliction, get all the haste you need, and you can play all three specs just fine. Yeah, that's basically it. Like, artifact weapon calculators, I'm going to look through that now. It's basically the same. Just Demonology, you want like really good weapon. You want the relics like Summoner's Prowess and, of course, Infernal Furnace. It's like Infernal Furnace, even though it's been nerfed, it's still your best trait because it's just so much damage comes from your imps. Like, Jaws of Shadow inadvertently synergizes with Infernal Furnace. So those two are really necessary. Let's look at Affliction. Hopefully it sends me straight to Affliction. No, it sends me straight to the fucking skull. Okay, so let's get relics we need. Where the fuck is the goddamn thing? Technically, the Grimacing Highborn Skull is the best relic for AF, but Harjatan's Leering Eye and like a lot is still about the same DPS. Like, obviously, Perdition relics are better, but they're also really dependent on RNG whether they're going to be worth anything or not. Yeah. And like the reason why like the Perdition relic in Tomb of Sargeras is great is because now we don't have to go back to farming Mythic Helia for a Titan Forged relic, because that was also very annoying having to get a group for that people for that when most people don't even want to do Trial of Valor. So in most cases, it's completely understandable. The best relic for your blood slot is, in most cases, for item level alone, and if you're running with shadow damage relics, it's the Minari Blood Pact. So that's one thing. But the path for Affliction is basically the same as it's been for the last patch now. Snake down through here. And then once you get Soul Flame, you get Agony, Shadows of the Flesh, Harvester of Souls, Seeds of Doom, Compounding Horror, Going to a Husk, Fatal Echoes, and Long Dark Night of the Soul. And just fill out the wheel as it ordered. It's just, there's not really a lot to think about. Actually, this is one thing I wanted to talk about. Typically, with the wheel, you want to fill out Perdition first, Shadowy Incantations, Minimal Agony, Corruption, Inherently Unstable. These two relics, it doesn't choices that doesn't really matter. From there, Seeds of Doom, Drain to a Husk, Shadows of the Flesh, and Long Dark Night of the Soul, and then you can start Concordance. Concordance is a weird thing for casters since like your primary stat is literally nowhere near as valuable as your secondaries. It's a very odd place for casters, especially just because what are you gonna do with that shit? But as far as Warlocks go, Affliction's still the best. Like for your stat weights, like I said, Haste equal Mastery. The growth weight at 1.5. Crits weight at 1.3, Intellect's weight at 1, and Versatility is about equal to Intellect. That doesn't mean you prioritize Versatility over Intellect by no means. Versatility is still garbage. It's just Versatility and Intellect are equally worthless right now in terms of stat weights. Like, you're already getting enough passive Intellect from the weapon, and all your gear is a shitload of Intellect, except for your jewelry pieces, obviously. So Mastery and Haste are still equal. What this means is in single target, Mastery is technically better than Haste. But anytime you add a second target, Haste starts really shooting past Mastery. Really on 3 targets where you're working with Council Cleave, Haste is by far better than Mastery. But that's on multiple targets where Haste becomes better because of the Soul Shard generation. Overall, keep Mastery and Haste balanced and your DPS will do fine. But don't neglect crit. You still want to have a good amount of crit because it does scale your unstable afflictions and Seed of Corruptions. So, this has been Grim signing out.